Welcome one and all to another edition of the Defo Show with Lubie here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, brought to you by Water Cleanup of Florida. We had lots of different weather the last week or so thanks to Hurricane Ian. We down here were spared. Sadly, those a little bit to the northwest of us, Fort Myers and Naples, were not, so our hearts and thoughts are going to them, and I'm sure they're going through a lot and they need a lot of help. Down here, if you did have any issues or will have any issues, when it comes to water, leaks are where a lot of it starts. And before you get that leak, detect it, find it, stop it before it starts. Water Cleanup of Florida are the people to do that for you. Give them a call, 954-579-0356. For immediate assistance, you can call them 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with over 60 years of experience when it comes to water leak detection specifically. They're the place to call. 954-579-0356. Not only they'll dry it, not only they'll clean it, not only they'll get it improved, you want it looking brand new, because they have licensed, certified, insured contractors on their staff. They'll make it look brand new, and you'll never have to worry about it again. Plus, they service Broward, Dade, Palm Beach counties. Call them 954-579-0356. Or check out the website, WCUFL.com. Also, the socials, they're active there. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Water Cleanup FL. And just to further cement your belief in Water Cleanup of Florida, with 70-plus 5-star reviews on Google, you will want to head over there if you do have any issues with your home or office. Water Cleanup of Florida. If you have the schmutz, they have the guts. It was a little gutsy and a little schmutzy for the Miami Dolphins last week. We talked a lot about the issues on and off the field with the Miami Dolphins today with NFL agent Brett Tessler and the one and only John Congemi, who still is a Finsider, does a lot with the Dolphins, and does pre and post for CBS 4 down here in South Florida. Talked lots of Miami Dolphins with Brett Tessler and John Congemi today on the Defo Show with Lubie on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Brett Tessler, the agent of the Stars, with us.
All righty, so Tessman, I want to switch gears to what became the big topic of last week, and it's funny, we talked with you last week, and we didn't really get into this because it sort of became a firestorm after the fact on Thursday. The whole Tua medical thing, you deal with players, you deal with the doctors, you deal with the teams. I've been under the impression that this isn't the 1980s, and it's not because the NFL cares. We know the NFL doesn't care, but because the NFL doesn't like losing money. They don't like dealing with lawsuits, and they don't like dealing with paying punitive damages. So we all felt that the concussion protocol was stringent and something the teams adhered to. We found out Thursday that everyone on Twitter and ESPN knows way more than any of the doctors or teams. What has been your reaction to the entire thing surrounding the Miami Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa and the way they mishandled him Sunday and then Thursday?
Well, first and foremost, my reaction is one of concern for Tua. Concern for the health of every player in this league, regardless whether they're clients of mine or not, regardless whether they're teammates of clients of mine or opponents of clients of mine. When you've been doing this as long as I have, it's a tough business. Yes, players do understand to a degree what they signed up for. It's a very physical profession. It's a dangerous profession. And naturally, like anybody watching the game, I would hope everybody watching was as sickened as I was at what ended up happening to Tua. Now, the question comes down to who's to blame. And like I said, when we talked about what happened the game before, I don't know. Nobody knows for sure exactly what the case is. Now, obviously, the story that came out is that it was a back injury. Maybe it was. But naturally, I think anybody watching it didn't look that way. And that's not to say it wasn't a back injury. Just optically, it appeared like a response that you've seen throughout the years with different guys who've gotten their bell rung. And so because of how it looked, obviously, people were way more reactionary to what happened the second time. And maybe it's a possibility that the two were not related whatsoever, or maybe they were totally related. I don't know. And really the only people that know are Tua. Initially, any of the medical personnel that he would have shared any information with, and the people whose job it is to pay close attention to these things and try to spot these things and to make sure that they take a very conservative approach as it relates to what decision to make about a person's health. And so in these situations, naturally, it's probably better to err on the side of caution. And, in time, I think the facts will come out, and maybe it ends up proving that the Dolphins did nothing wrong. Or maybe, hopefully not, it gets proven the other way, because that would certainly be a bad look for the league and for the organizations. So, time's going to tell. All I know is it's very, very upsetting to see what we saw in Thursday night's game, to see somebody having that type of neurological reaction. Very scary stuff for sure. As much as to some fans, these guys are just, a number or, a jersey or whatever. People need to remember, somebody watching that, as bad as you think it was, maybe as a fan watching it, or, as tough as it was for me as an agent watching it, for somebody who obviously is not one of my clients, you still have to remember, this guy's got a mom and dad watching this. This guy's got a best friend watching this. Some of these guys have kids watching this, a wife watching this. And so you can only imagine what it would have been like to be in the position of those people having to watch the sights that we're seeing, when watching that game on TV, and seeing that close up of Tua on the ground with his fingers clenched up and having to be removed on a board. If you think it was hard for you as just a random fan to watch, imagine what it would have been like to be a teammate of this guy, to be a friend of this guy, or to be, family and somebody who really knows and loves this guy. So the images were obviously very hard to watch. And hopefully in time, first and foremost, hopefully his long-term health is unaffected. And then, of much less importance, hopefully he can continue his career, which was certainly taking a turn in the right direction. And then secondly, you hope it's proven that nothing was done wrong, and that, it's just all one big, confusing, unfortunate circumstance.
Well, and the unseen part of it also. I mean, that was very evident what was going on with Tua. And as you said, I mean, we don't know. I mean, maybe the diagnosis was correct. Although, who was the doctor, Brett Tessler, agent to the Stars, that was like the official physician of the NFL, and he made James Woods like in Any Given Sunday look like Christian Barnard when it came to medical capabilities, and honesty, but. And he was in total denial that anything, any head trauma, what was going on in the history of the NFL. And then you'll see something like Junior Seau, the unseen thing, where that had to be. I mean, ultimately it was catastrophic. But for the family to see the deterioration of this guy when nobody knew there was really anything wrong with him to begin with, even though he had incurred concussions during his career. I know this during the evolution of all of this safety protocol type of stuff that happened in the NFL. The original reaction was, "Oh my God, why don't they just put a skirt on the quarterback? You can't even touch this guy." But one thing, I mean, that was problematical for me was that no flags were thrown on these plays.
That was a rough tackle.
And how is that possible? And does that not? I mean, is that not self-defeating? You can have all the protocol you want, once the guy is injured. And try and take precautions and bring him into the tent, take him out of the game, or guys spotting from a drone somewhere to see if somebody looks like they're a little bit woozy that you wouldn't have necessarily noticed. But with all of that going on, isn't some of this on the officials? To enforce rules to discourage people from doing exactly what happened, 2 games in a row where somebody kind of picked up to, well, the first one was a shove, but I mean, these ragdoll tackles that went unpenalized and not even, no flag throwing, nothing. Is that not detrimental overall to all of the different safety protocols that, the NFL has at least seemingly attempted to put in place?
Well, there's a lot to unpack here. In regards to the hits, I thought they were both marginal. Obviously, I've seen quarterbacks get let off easier, and I've also seen quarterbacks get taken down much harder. The first one was, a guy shoving a quarterback upon releasing the ball. If that guy played for Al Davis 40 years ago, he'd probably get benched for going so easy on him. You know, all I kept thinking when I watched both of these plays, I hear Al Davis's voice in my head saying the opposing team's quarterback must go down and he must go down hard. I mean,
right.
This was a soundbite that we heard every 5 minutes when watching ESPN when they would be, you know, advertising the video for the NFL's hardest hits. Yeah. And so this was the game. This was the way the game was marketed back in the day. And so, you know, these hits throughout the history of football are really nothing worth mention. And frankly, the second hit, although it looked like the guy took Tua down harder, it looked like Tua's head may have actually hit the ground harder in the first one. And so what happens is, if that was a concussion, you know, one of the known symptoms of concussions is, you know, the more you get, the easier they are to get. And so, you know, it gets to a point where, I mean, you know, you'd see guys like Steve Young 25 years ago, and it looks like anyone barely touches them, and boom, you know, it happens again. And this is when it gets really scary, and this is when you start thinking long-term health and all this stuff. So to answer the first part of your question, I don't believe that anybody involved in this is just purely evil. I certainly don't believe anybody involved in this stuff. You know, you mentioned James Woods' character from the movie On Any Given Sunday. As cartoonish as that character appears today, it probably was not that far from realistic 35, 40 some years ago. And so, you know, back then, you know, guys were just taking shots left and right. They had no idea what they were putting in their bodies. They were getting sent back into games after not one, but two, who knows, maybe three concussions. And back then, you know, the league just wasn't as popular as it is today, where, you know, people are watching. There wasn't the TV access to see these replays being played over and over and over and over on a 24-hour loop. So, you know, naturally things are way more exposed today than they would have been back in the day. And, you know, the NFL has become a very professional organization in terms of how business is conducted, in terms of how medical issues are dealt with and things of that nature. So I certainly would hope and pray that nobody knowingly would have, you know, put somebody back in the line of danger. But, you know, it could have been a mistake. But, you know, when you're talking about matters like this, a mistake can be catastrophic. And so I just read that the NFLPA unilaterally ended up releasing that independent doctor, and his name has not been out there, so I'm not sure who is responsible for that game. But nonetheless, hopefully it's just an unlikely coincidence that, you know, he had an injury in Thursday, and then, you know, off of the injury from the Sunday game before, and hopefully they weren't related, and hopefully it's proven that nobody did anything wrong, which certainly is a possibility. And like in any situation, you know, people need to allow the facts to come out, and in time, hopefully they will. And, you know, it'll either completely clear, you know, people who are being accused of, you know, doing things that maybe they didn't do so wrong, or maybe it ends up proving that certain people did deserve to be relieved of their duties. And, you know, either way, again, regardless what ends up being found there, the most important thing is Tua. And so hopefully he ends up being okay, and hopefully, you know, he can, you know, resume his career when he's ready to, and, you know, have a very happy, successful career and then life after.
It's funny, too, because we often talk about this. Brett Tessler, the agent of the stars, with us here on the Defo show. But, you know, how ridiculous it is that people try to pick each individual game on the schedule before the season starts and say, that's a win, that's a loss, because certainly the circumstances have changed dramatically if you're looking at the first few weeks of the season with regard to the Dolphins' next matchup, which they may be playing without Tua, although Teddy Bridgewater at least seems to be a competent guy, and maybe with 10 days to work on it, you know, has an even better chance of beating the New York Jets, who would have looked like patsies on the schedule, but now find themselves at 2-2 and got their quarterback back after not having him for the first few games and 3 games, and and he, brought them a very dramatic victory on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So what looked like a gimme, all of a sudden, looms as much more of a toss-up. Peel yourself off the mat Monday, and it's a combination of many things as peel yourself off the mat Monday, including the pigskin playbook. Which are we settled with that, John Congemi? Are you okay with that? Can you be associated with something called the pigskin playbook?
I have been called a lot worse. I'm kind of embracing that.
I mean, pigskin, it's a natural thing. There.
It is. It is. I like it. All
right, you have to have alliteration.
I like the dual title, though.
Yeah.
I like when you kind of throw in, Dateline Dolphins.
Some Dateline Dolphins, cool. Yeah, for sure. Speaking of Dateline Dolphins, John Congemi, I don't know, what your thoughts were about all that's transpired. We were talking with Brett Tessler, the agent of the Stars, and it does seem like, for a long time, the NFL's medical people, the people that were on the staff of the NFL, had an attitude that was even more liberal in terms of making guys play or allowing them to play than James Woods did in any given Sunday as a team physician, right? Where, he was ready to juice everybody with whatever it took to get them out on the field. And I'm not sure what to make of it. I want to believe like Lubie did. Maybe I'm just a pie in the sky guy now in my old age, but I do feel like with all of the scrutiny that was paid, that the NFL tried to put something in place that would be protective, including having spotters that are looking down on the field. So even if nothing happened, if they see something funky, they go, hey, check out 72.
Right. That's the right thing to do.
Which is good, right? I don't know. Do you believe in all of this controversy that's going on? People are livid. It's almost like, arguing with, somebody that has a MAGA agenda, where, the people are now adamant that the NFL has, screwed this up royally and that this guy should have never been out there playing. But I'm not sure. What did you make of the whole Tua thing?
It goes back to like when we were talking earlier about John Harbaugh, what's the percentages? What's the play here to go for it on fourth down, or do you kick the field goal? Do you go with your gut, which is kind of old school, or do you go with the numbers, which is kind of the new school, right? You have a coach that tells you, no, the numbers say, let's go for it, because even if you miss, you're going to pin the team down on the 2-yard line and no harm, no foul. We'll get the ball back at the 50. Yeah. That's what the percentages say. I think it's really the same thing, or not the same thing, but very close to the same idea as when you're looking at athletes now, especially in football, and you're trying to protect the players with a lot of player safety initiatives and things like that. When you saw Tua take the push and get the whiplash against the Bills,
yeah,
it was an old school 15-round TKO, like, hey, stop the fight. Whoever it is, we're coming in, we're stopping the fight because this guy can't defend himself, right? He stumbles around. That was a sign of gross motor instability is what they're calling it in today's language. There, the guy lost it. He doesn't have his marbles, right? He's out of it. That would have been a natural instinct. So now they take him right away to the locker room, which was the right thing to do, or the tent. Either way, you have the independent neurologist come down with your team staff. Supposedly, they put him through all the protocols that you need that are in place. Now, whether they followed them to the letter of the law, evidently the NFLPA doesn't think so, because they end up firing that guy. Okay. But for what we know as a fan, he went through all the protocols you needed to get back in the game or not to play. That was the decision of the medical staff with the independent neurologist. So they decided to put him back in the game. Well, if I'm the player, I understand the player's safety, but if I'm the player, and I've had multiple concussions, if I'm the player in the locker room, and after about 10 minutes, I go to the trainer who knows me really well, and I go, hey, listen, hey, I'm fine. I passed everything you want to tell them. Give me a play. I'll regurgitate the play to you. I'll tell you exactly what everybody does, and I'll tell you the score of the game. I'll tell you what happened last week. I'm good to go. Because sometimes you can get dinged like that, feel a little crazy for about 30 seconds. All of a sudden, you start getting your faculties back, and you go, you know what? I'm good. I'm fine. I want to play. They're paying me millions of dollars to play. This team's depending on me to play. I want to play. It's my decision. I passed all the stuff you're giving me, all the protocols. I have every right to play. No one's taking that side of it. Everybody's going player safety, but no one's really thinking about, listen, if Tua did everything he's supposed to do, why wasn't he allowed to play? Now, I don't know if that ran into Thursday night, because that's what made the scene more muddy, in my opinion, because you weren't sure what everybody, their gut told them he had a concussion against the Bills. Everybody says he did not. All the team doctors, all the physicians, all the independent people, he did not have a concussion. Well, all of a sudden he goes back and he has, something severe happen to him on a short week on a Thursday night, and national TV's watching. Everybody goes back to say, whoa, somebody made a mistake. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but they followed the protocols that led him to that position. I just thought it was unfortunate what happened on Thursday to any athlete, especially Tua, coming off of that situation. That's what made it just, blow up.
Well, my issue with the whole thing is, look, I think it's naive for people to think that coaches and players are going to err on the side of caution. I wish they would, and we all wish they would. But here's the deal. When you set from what we haven't had this, they've had these protocols for years now. We've never had this issue. So they must be decent protocols. And
right.
You see, they're quick to get them off the field. They're quick to get them in the tent. They're quick to get them back there. So
right.
They're doing their job in their mind, right? So if they go to the doctor and doctors repeat in the game, say he's fine. And supposedly all he had to do was be tested Monday. They tested him every day all last week.
Yeah.
Yes, to me, you just sit him because you know what? You're 3-0 and Bridgewater's solid. But if the doctors say he's cleared, he's passing every freaking test. McDaniel, that's the one thing I'm holding on. McDaniel said something I find interesting. If the doctors clear him and then you sit him, then when do you play him? If you're already now going against the doctors who know what they're doing, not Twitter or ESPN, if they're saying he can play, he wants to play, and you sit him, then when do you play him? And that's my thing is, you're following the protocols.
Well, he's in the same, and Lubie, he's in the same situation now.
Yeah, they have to sit him now, but
he's in protocol now, okay?
Yes.
So he's not eligible to play until he passes everything to leave protocol, to be released from protocol. But, it's a long week for the Dolphins this week. So naturally, your gut, we go back to that analogy, your gut saying, hey, we're holding him out against the Jets, right? We're holding him out against the Jets because perception says if we play him, we're really pushing the envelope now. We have to sit him, even though he may have, passed everything with flying colors, okay? So it's going to be a difficult situation again for the Dolphins because Tua's going to say, hey, I'm fine.
He was already asking.
I'm good. I'm good to go. Did I pass everything? But I'm not so sure they're going to allow him to, to make that opportunity possible.
Pretty strange. I mean, the whole story. I far be it from me to end up defending the NFL in this situation, but I find it, it would be startling to think that they fudged all of these reports. Threw Tua out there. Now, the likelihood he was going to have something extremely similar happen, even though it came about in a different fashion, the tackle and the way that he hit the ground, but his head essentially rebounded off the turf there in a very similar fashion the second time, only if he was concussed to begin with, I guess that could have made it worse. That play in and of itself could have caused that reaction, even though he might have been fine before. It's weird, though, to think that the NFL at this stage, with all that's happened, would be faking, these protocols and coming up short. I thought, and I said this to Brett Tessler, and he thought these plays were sort of borderline anyway in terms of being in violation of the rules. But the fact that they don't flag some of these things, I think also, it creates a very difficult situation because. If players are going to go with impunity and attack other players because they don't even incur a penalty on the play, then are you not exacerbating the possibility that you're going to have these kind of dangerous and catastrophic things occur?
It's everybody that signs up to play football knows the dangers of football. When you're
right, it's a dangerous sport.
All the way through. It's a violent sport, okay?
Yeah.
And it's gotten bigger, faster, and stronger over the last 25 to 30 years, okay? They put all these protocols in over the last maybe, 8 to 10, 12, something like that, years, especially in the National Football League, in college football, and high school football. Take the play last night, Kansas City and Tampa Bay. I can't remember who was involved. It might have been Mike Evans in the back of the end zone. high pass at the end of the game.
Oh, he got smacked.
He got rocked.
He gets smacked, okay? And that guy's making a play because he thinks Mike Evans, who's 6'5", and Tom Brady put the football where only Mike Evans can catch it, he's going to come down with that football. Now, as the defensive back, I better make a play on Mike Evans because I don't know if he's going to catch the football or not, right? But in today's – 30 years ago, 20 years ago, that was a great play by that defensive back because next time Mike Evans comes over the middle, he's not going to maybe go that high. He's not going to extend his ribs that much because he might get knocked out, okay, which is a good football play. But he's deemed a defensive player now, okay, but he had every right to catch that football. And if that defender does not make that play and he catches the football, when he gets to the sidelines, the defensive coordinator and defensive back coach goes, what are you doing? He can't go to the coach. Coach, he was defenseless.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, my God.
But it was flagged. It was flagged.
Right.
Ball's on the 1 yard line. It's tough.
You'd rather see that, though, than, see, somebody get just absolutely maimed, which, it is true. We tend to ignore
scenarios that come up,
It's not a safe thing to begin with to play this.
Well, that's the thing.
I mean, it just
think that's the thing. Like,
you're not going to be able to eliminate all concussions in boxing, no matter what you do. Whether guys wear headgear or not was always a debate.
NASCAR, accidents, they're going to happen.
It's going to happen by the nature of the fact that you sanction this kind of activity to begin with. And I mean, even on the college level, John, I mean, when you see some of the hits that take place, and there are a lot of targeting calls, it seems like, more on the college level for some reason than you see in the pros. But and seeing a lot of them, and they seem to be very careful. I mean, even stuff that doesn't look like, it had any intent.
They review it.
Yes.
They review it, right.
And he will, I mean, eject the guy from the game, even though, you're looking at a play and going, wow, I mean, the guy just, made kind of a natural move, but unfortunately, the player sort of ducked into him, and the next thing you know, they're head-to-head contact. But when you see some of these hits, it's amazing that people aren't decapitated, never mind, concussions. It's not a safe sport to begin with, so to try and eliminate and legislate all of this out of the game, not necessarily possible. But I do believe in my heart of hearts that they're attempting to do this right. Yeah.
They're trying. The problem is sometimes, the NFLPA came out right away with, we need to make changes in the protocols. We need to make modifications in the protocols. I don't even know if they spoke to the doctors yet. That did.
Well, they fired the one guy, a scapegoat. I guess.
I know that, but I mean, all of a sudden, it was that day that they're going to make changes and modify. But let's learn a little bit about how the process went about, and then if changes or modifications need to be made, let's make them. But sometimes you jump the gun, just to be the first one out there to say, I'm taking a stand on it. Let's get all the information first. And then if changes need to be made, if modifications need to be made, hey, the fans and the players and everybody involved in the NFL that is a vested interest, we're all for it.
Tua seemed to be fine in the second half of the game that he played.
Tua was fine flying back from Cincinnati, or else that center would have never released him to let him put him on the plane.
That's my problem with the whole thing is, cover up. And it's like, the Cincinnati hospital, that's one of the best at what they do in the country.
Level 1 trauma center
is in on it. Like, they don't need that. Like, come on, guys. Like, that's look, we're all for the safety, but again, that's a funny word to use with this sport. Like, you can try, but it's never going to be 100%. It's friggin' football. Like,
guys, you would think if Tua was released from the hospital and allowed on the team plane back, that he'd be in like seat 4A by himself in a bubble, kind of, hanging out, no lights, some sea music, sauna music, whatever it is, he's okay. He's watching a movie with his head coach.
I know.
Laughing on the way home. Yeah. He's going to be good, and thank God he's going to be good, right? We're all, very worried about the situation when it happened because that did not look good. But, 2-3 hours later, he was able to pass all the protocols, do all the things he needed to do, and he was relatively in a good state of mind. And now let's see how we go over the next few days, if anything, happens during that time. But if he passes all the protocols, the Dolphins are in a very difficult situation because they're going to have to say, you know what, we're going to take caution, and we're going to let you have 14 days before we let you get back into your routine.
Yeah, well, they're supposed to keep him out for the season. Even
That's
though,
my thing.
Like you said, John. I mean, they would. I was surprised when he flew home with the team.
Yeah,
because this hospital was not going to release him and say, "Hey, why don't you get on a plane?" Which is supposed to be very, suspect. If you have this kind of head trauma, and it's crazy to think that they would allow that to happen. If if he was in any kind of danger whatsoever, especially knowing that this was going to fan the flames of controversy. We actually met Nowitzki, the guy that is the head guy, and I have great respect for the man. I think he really is extremely sincere in what he's doing. I don't think he's out there just trying to get attention for himself or anything. And he's been campaigning forever. It's almost like a Martha Burke type of thing, where he was a lone wolf forever, and they hated him. And I remember meeting him the first time. I think I was in Arizona, and he had like a little pamphlet about concussions. And nobody wanted to talk to him. And Leslie Visser's brother, Chris, who was always producing stuff and had various people that he represented, said, hey, you might want to talk to this guy, kind of interesting about what's going on. And so that's how we met him. And then, we used to talk to him all the time. But, he was adamant that something horrible, took place here. And, I'm sort of with you thinking, how could this be where, Tua, who's supposed to be so injury prone and fragile, if he's coherent and fine, and they hold up two fingers and he says, yeah, that's a deuce. What are you going to do? I mean, I'm sure the protocols are, fairly commonplace, and it's a regiment that all of these sports leagues are following now.
Well, I think the reason why there's a collaboration between the team doctor and the independent neurosurgeon is because the neurosurgeon is going through what's mandated by the league and by the Players Association. The team doctors are there to say, is that the guy that we know on a Tuesday on an off day that comes in and watches film and we chit chat and we can talk about everything? What are the natural faculties that these characteristics carry over on a normal day when I see him compared to now going through all this stuff and knowing what happened on the field? And then they get together and come to a conclusion of whether he's, eligible to play or not. So I just think that it's a conspiracy theory, a little bit theater to think about, why they would let someone go out and play that wasn't passing all of these protocols that are put in place.
I normally never sign with the league on anything. I mean,
honestly,
I would be suspicious of virtually everything that comes out of Roger Goodell's mouth in terms of sincerity, but I do believe that they, we're trying their best not to avert a situation like this. And the second situation looked particularly ugly because when you see a guy with his fingers looking like Anthony Munoz,
that was crazy.
You're like, wow. I mean, let's hope nothing happened to this kid. And that's when you realize, you take yourself out of the sports fantasy thing and realize, okay, this is an actual person here, lying, perhaps even paralyzed or worse. On the field with a catastrophic injury, but it must not have lasted long because they would have never put them on that plane.
Again, lots of take flying around between Twitter, major sports and news networks. We talked with Brett Tessler, who had one interesting opinion about the Dolphins and Tua, and John Congemi, who's around the Dolphins and within the Dolphins, the way they've handled it. Look, I'm sure they could be more cautious. We talked a lot about that last week. But that doesn't mean that there was a conspiracy or a cover-up either. Mike McDaniel seems to very much care about Tua Tagovailoa, not only for the success of the team, not only for the success of his tenure as head coach, but it feels like they actually have a really good rapport, and they're both really good for each other, and they're tied to each other and their success. It feels like they covered every protocol, and they're still covering every protocol. I presume Tua will not play this weekend just because you're going to play it safe. But when does he play? It was really tough to watch, and it was a tough hit. Both affected Tua, but the last one, the way you saw him clenching on the field, but he's passed so far everything. It feels like he's still passing things. After next week, let's say you don't play him. When do you play him? That's the big question. We will find out. We'll talk so much more Miami Dolphins. We'll, of course, touch on the Miami Hurricanes as well. Check us out each and every morning on South Florida Live from 7 to 9 a.m. live. Just look up South Florida Live or the Defo Show with Lubie on YouTube or Google. You can check us out on our national podcast. Brandon Lang, once again, was solid in his handicapping. Check that out. The Believe Network, BLEAV.com. Search After Hours. And most days right here, our South Florida content, the Defo Show with Lubie, on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-9066.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in the Plantation, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.